What up, nerds? Godfall. Oh, that was fast.
Why I still fall back to you?
Alright, so we're gonna go over pretty much everything as fast as possible. I'm not gonna get too hardcore into everything because honestly, at the end of the day, it would require me to play this game longer. Yes, spoiler alert, this is going to be my last Godfall video. I was having so much fun with this game, but unfortunately, the way they lined up the endgame, the way it plays, the way it just feels like a drag. It could be so much better, but unfortunately, it just feels like the fundamentals of this game is what's actually holding it back. And if this stuff gets fixed, it won't be for a very long time. But usually when games feel this bad on the end game and there's so many things wrong with it, it just never gets fixed. So really quick about the graphics, because I did talk about it in my last video. I'm sticking to what I said. I'm sticking to my guns. I think it looks good. I know it drives a lot of people crazy with the glossy look. I honestly didn't even notice it myself until I actually started watching other people's videos and what they thought about it to see if they were experiencing the same things as I was. And someone pointed that out, and I thought, I went back to the game and looked at it again, and then it's just like once you see it, you can't unsee it. But it didn't kill the game for me. That wasn't my issue with the game. So I just wanted to go over that really quick, something that I noticed. So if you're someone that actually really bothers you to see, well, that right there is already a knock against the game, because it's in every single map. No matter where you go, it is shiny everywhere. So let's take a quick look at abilities. I really felt like when I originally looked at this, that this was going to be really good and it have some options and stuff like that. And it just kind of really fell flat. I mean, personally, weapon technique was really the only one that I cared about. Rampage felt like it was there, but it just didn't really make a difference. And then the polarity attacks is just something you'll always have, and it builds slow, and I know you can build into it so that you can make it a little bit stronger, but the problem that you notice in the game is that everything that you get is so small that it doesn't really feel like anything. You have abilities like Cypher attack that doesn't really, what it does, it just doesn't really do anything or feel like it has a big impact. The Soul Shatter, it helps, but to be honest with you, you don't notice it. The only thing that really hits and that you notice is the main stats, which is might, all stats, spirit being the strongest in my opinion, the crit chance and the crit damage, alongside with the gear that you get. But everything else just kind of falls flat and doesn't really feel like anything. The shield abilities I just had no interest in at all. And the two biggest disappointments in this tree is vitality, because I feel like it only gives you HP and it only works with Siphon, and weak points, which I'll get into more in the boss fights. But weak points has such a great mechanic, it's just flawed in the way that it actually works. The items, on the other hand, have been done relatively well in this game. This is where you're gonna feel your biggest impact. When you get an item that is better than the other one, it's going to feel that way, because of the fact that my favorite ability in this game that I just felt had the most impact to it was weapon technique. And because I strongly believe Longsword and Warhammer have the best weapon techniques on both the light attack side and the heavy attack side, it almost made it so that I did not care about the other weapons. Now, that could just be a preference thing, and it can change from person to person, which is perfectly fine. That is a good thing. But for me, it kind of just locked me into sword and hammer, which kind of kills all the other items that you're getting. but at least the accessories and the neck piece and the banner and the soul stone, that all works well with each other. The stats that you get with them really helps your build feel stronger. Again, this is where you're going to get their biggest impact, and the crafting system that goes along with it does feel good as well. So basically you want to look for your main stat that you're looking for, and then anything that you're trying to build on, whether it be elements, shield damage, polarity attack, rampage, it's all on there. You just go, you roll it. You can take a blue that has a good base stat, roll on it. If you get some good stats on it, you can knock it up to a legendary, will get its optimal stats, and it just plays really well, and you get a lot of impact with it. On the topic of impact, it really feels like Valorplates are supposed to be really important to the end game and giving you that slight push in Dreamstones. Specifically, that's where I feel like it's going to be its strongest. So each one gives you a slight bonus to something specific, like crit chance or soul shatter buildup or breach damage or poison. It's all spread out between these Valorplates. Now, to me, it started to feel like pre-builds. And the reason that is because once you start getting into the later endgame and you have to start doing more Dreamstones to build up to do your tower, which I'll get into a little bit later, the Dreamstones, you can really start to get an advantage with the Valorplates, because in the Dreamstones, depending on what you do and the choices you make, you will either get some resistances on the boss or weaknesses on the boss. So if you have a Phoenix Valorplate that has gear on it for that has extra fire damage, like for instance, if you have a sword with fire damage and a secondary weapon with fire damage, and they're built well, and you have other gear on it that increases the chance to ignite, and just any kind of fire increase you can get on it. If you run into a Dreamstone where an enemy has high resistance to physical but is very weak to fire damage, you could take advantage of that and exploit that with your Phoenix armor plate that has the extra fire damage build with good weapons on it. These Valorplates tend to become more confusing than what they really need to be, than actually like impactful or interesting. I'll just end up focusing on one Valorplate. The bonuses at the end of the day don't really do anything besides the Archon Fury, which you don't get enough to really feel like it matters as well. It's pretty decently strong, and you can make it even stronger, but again, I don't care about it. I think that's the problem, is that when it comes down to it, I just don't care about it. It's not something I'm looking forward to, and quite honestly, through the story, the Archon Fury, it tells you in like very small lettering that it's ready, and then the indicator that you have it is so small on the bottom left side that you're probably gonna forget you even have it most of the time. And that's where I think these Valorplates, although they're supposed to be very interesting, they just kind of make the game feel like it's missing so much more, when they didn't really need to add that many Valorplates if they weren't going to be that interesting to the actual gameplay. So how does the game actually feel when you play it, when you play through it, when you get to the end of the story, when you continue on to the end game? How does it work? What are we doing? Well, you level up through it, you get to about 25, 26 to about 29, 30. You're going to reach the end of the game. You're going to reach the end of the game, you're going to fight the last boss, you're going to beat him, and then you're going to move on to the end game. Now, from 30 to 50, the Tower of Trials is by far the best way and the most efficient way to go from 30 to 50. And the cool thing about it is that as you level, the Tower of Trials scales with you. So not only do you have all the experience and the fighting right there in front of you, where you don't have to run a distance to find a mini boss and then sometimes it disappears and then you have to chase him again. You have everything right there, and this requires coins of valor. Tower of Trials, it's only 5 coins, and at this point you've grinded through the game already through the story, so you have a nice little stockpile. The problem is that once you hit the Ascended, it's 20 per go, so you grind it out and then you run out of coins of valor. This is what I was afraid of, and it's exactly what happened. Those little blue icons around the map that you have little mini bosses that you can run around and you get coins of valor from are so inefficient, it's ridiculous. First of all, they don't scale up. There's only like one on each map that is to your level, and at most you get 3 valor coins per run, which is insane. You need like 7 runs or something like that just to enter the Ascended Trials, which is just an absurd amount of time. So they become completely obsolete the moment you do them, the one time you did them during the story. And I was afraid of that because now you have all this content that looks like it's right there in your face and you're not even using it. There's no point to do them at all. To get your coin of valor up, to go back into the Ascended Trials, the best way to do it is through Dreamstones. And Dreamstones is going to be the last bit of content I talk about today, alongside with my problem with bosses. I'm going to use one in particular to explain my point. How it works is you select one, you go in, you get a choice between 2 options. Some will give you certain boons, certain item rewards at the end. It'll give you certain buffs, certain debuffs, effects on the boss, and you get to see what your final encounter is going to look like. With this, you're able to change your Valorplates, which kind of piggybacks on what I was saying earlier about the usefulness of Valorplates. You go in, you fight the boss. The beginning is 30, the next tier is 33, the next one is 36, and you don't get loot at your level, you get loot at the level of the Dreamstone. I didn't need to do Dreamstones because they had so many coins of valor, so I just did as many Tower of Trials as I could do so I can get some upgrades. And you know, I was having fun with the tower at the time, so I just kind of spammed through my coins. Once I got out of my coins, I had to then go into Dreamstones because it is the most efficient way to do this. And learning these bosses and understanding their mechanics can be rewarding if it was done correctly. The problem is that you go through this difficult fight, which is good, but then when you actually beat the boss and you complete it and you pick up the loot, it's all level 30, or it's all level 33, or it's all level 36. And now you are getting some valor coins while you do it, which is fine, but they either need to trim some of these down, or they just need to scale the gear up so that when you do it, it doesn't feel like a burden. It's okay if you only spam the top one, but if I have to go through 7 or 8 fights, then I should at least get gear at my level. And it just kind of killed the vibe for me having to do that, and then not being able to go into the trial, which actually scales with me and I get nothing but good items, or at least level appropriate items that I can work with. Now let's get into the actual bosses a little bit. The bosses, I started to feel that in the beginning of the story when you're fighting, you just swing your sword, you do your combos, and it's not really that bad. You can parry a few things and it's fine. Later on, as you get deeper into the story, you start to run into mobs that have these interruption mechanics that you cannot do anything about. It is the most infuriating thing in the game. Nothing destroys the flow of combat like waiting for an opportunity, going to do one combo, just one start to finish combo, and getting pushed back. And don't let that happen while something behind you that you don't even know is there, because this, I just didn't hear it, or maybe I wasn't paying attention, whatever the case may be, because your field of view is so tunnel, even though things are happening all around you, that you get pushed back out of your combo, which feels bad, and then you get juggled by another monster that feels bad, and then something else hits you, which chunks your HP. Now you're low, you go to heal, and you get sniped by range, and it just kind of feels all out of your control. You have no say in the combat when you're mid combo. I'm 3 clicks in and they have these moves where they completely annul their stun from being hit to interrupt you, and not just stop you in a way where it kind of just pushes you back a little bit. I mean, it completely knocks you to the ground, which destroys the flow of combat. And that's one mob. 4 of them could do it at the same time on you, and it just feels extremely bad for the combat. Bosses amplify that 1,000 times worse. Oh my god, you want to talk about when you fight a boss, it really feels like it's just flailing. It flails everywhere. It does these huge animations, swings, and you either can't avoid them because they lock onto you, or you think you have an opening because they delayed the mob's attack to where it feels like it's an opening, and then he swings again and knocks you down on the ground. And then you get up, and then you're laying in fire, or there is an opening and he's standing in fire, so you can't do anything because the fire destroys you in this game. You get absolutely melted by objects on the ground. Meanwhile, when you get the bosses lower in their HP bar, more mechanics become available. So you have the boss flailing on top of something running after you, on top of something throwing something at you, on top of having a 2-second window. And your 2-second windows to actually do damage is also very unsatisfying. They have weak points in this game. A lot of these fights revolve around getting more openings by exploiting weak points. You have weak points that are red that you can hit, do extra damage, and you have weak points that are blue. The blue ones tend to be interruptions. Now, if there's usually in the middle of their heavy attacks where there's a small window where if you proc the weak point and you hit it, you stun them and gives you a window to actually do some damage. The problem with this is that weak points are so flawed, it hurts. It's such a good mechanic. It's such a smart one and makes you feel like you're doing something and have control over the fight, but it just doesn't work. It's broken. I don't understand why they thought it was a good idea to put such a large delay on the proc of the weak point. It was to the point where when I first started to try to figure out how weak points actually worked, I thought they were broken. It felt like they were broken. I could not, for the life of me, proc it on a lesser mob. But what I noticed is 2 issues. One, you have to hover over the weak point for like 2 or 3 seconds before it actually triggers. And remember what I said before, you don't have much time to do damage. So just trying to proc the weak point just takes up your damage window. And then on top of that, something that I actually noticed making this video is that the main dot for your crosshair, so to speak, is offset. It's not centered on the middle of the screen. So that's why it feels so uncomfortable. I'm trying to put the middle of my screen on the dot, on the weak point, and I'm not getting it to proc. And then I noticed the white dot, which is so small, you can't even, it's so hard to see it with everything going on that you have to turn the camera downward to actually put the crosshair on the weak point, hold it at a very awkward position for like 3 seconds, in which now you're kind of losing damage because You're swinging weird, and the whole screen shakes when you're actually attacking and adjusts itself. So it's like trying to get a headshot in an FPS, and you have to hold it there perfectly until this animation procs, and then you hit them. All in the middle of this flailing and things blowing up all over the place. It's an absolute nightmare. This mechanic would be phenomenal if it wasn't for the fact that it just doesn't work. They need to fix the crosshair, because it is offset. It's not centered. And if it is, it still feels really weird. But I looked at it and it just looks so off to me. And they need to lower the time it takes to actually proc the weak point. A weak point build would actually be really fun. I would enjoy it. They have AoE versions of it where, you know, if you hit the proc and you get a death blow, it explodes and does damage. And there's other things too with that you could do, where I know there's something in here where if you soul shatter the mob, it then explodes and gives a little bit of that soul shatter to everything around it. But as long as weak points takes this long to proc when you're trying to be in the middle of a fight where there's 1,000 things going off at the same time, this combat and the endgame will never feel good. Forget the fact that the bosses just flail around. Forget the fact that there's just way too much happening to not have an extended period of time where you can physically do damage, and you literally just feel like you're dodging and sliding all over the ground. If you take all that away, if you just leave that in there and let that, just don't even change that, if you just decrease the weak point proc time, or give me gear that allows me to proc that faster, this would feel significantly better. You cannot base your combat or the difficulty of your combat around a mechanic that doesn't work. So as you can tell, I'm pretty frustrated with the game, and as it stands right now, this will be the last time I play it or even talk about it unless something really good happens, which unfortunately we've all been down this road before. It's not gonna change. I'm so cynical when it comes to games like this. It really just feels like a cash grab and a hype train. They kept everything absolutely quiet. They were very picky on the stuff that they released, and I should have known that that was going to be a huge issue. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. I got fun out of it. I didn't get full retail fun out of it, but I did at least enjoy my time for what it was. They could make a lot of changes in this. I will always take a peek to see if it's worth talking about, if it's worth giving another go. But quite frankly, they just did a patch the other day, and it really feels like the only thing they did was add a salvage button, which absolutely blew my mind that they needed a patch for that. The fact that that went through the game and came out on release without a keybind, or at least keybindable buttons for salvage, and you literally had to click the item and then click salvage to go through a plethora of items, really sets the tone on how these guys feel about this game, what the purpose of this game is, and where this game is headed. They have so much work to do. It's insane. It's not gonna get done. It's gonna feel bad for a very long time, and I guess we're just gonna have to wait for the next thing that comes out. Outriders looks pretty decent, although I have my worries about that. It does look interesting. I think right now I'm going to just go back to playing Genshin Impact. I took a little bit of a break from Genshin. I played it when it first came out. I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I love that game so much, but I just needed to take a break from it because it is something that revolves around doing dailies all the time, and I wanted to get the YouTube channel started, and I needed to motivate myself and all that stuff, so I had to pull myself back from that. But now, since I'm in this groove, I really want to jump back into that and maybe start making some videos on that. And then the next looter that comes out, which I think is going to be Outriders, I believe it's called, we're going to take a look at that as well. Anything new, any ideas, any new games I don't know about, feel free to like drop them down in the comment, because I'm really looking forward to just trying new games. And once again, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Later.